Thanks to my Ko-fi supporters that make these videos possible. You can also get a deck review on my weekly Tuesday and Sunday streams. It's the best way to support the channel.
Hello everyone. So Safari is a deck I've had for almost 4 years now. One of my longest lived decks. Many don't know though that she's part of a cycle of triple pipped legendaries from M20. There was a time I considered building all of them, but ultimately, and I mean this to no offense to any Dracoseth lovers, but they're not all made equal. Even still, Vilis, despite being a legitimately strong card, as we'll get into, is really hard to justify command zoning. In there, he's a giant kick-me sign, and 8 mana even in black, with all the rituals, mana doublers, and cabal coffers in the mana base is still quite a hurdle. Naturally, this means I have to reanimate the guy, but who would be the perfect commander for such a deck? How would I build a list that drew me as many cards as possible with Vilis while still having alternate big plays I could do that means I wouldn't get bent over immediately by a Bazooka Bog? This is a question I've slept on for quite a few years. Speaking of sleeping, if you're anything like me, you are a major nap time enthusiast. And that's why I'm excited to be sponsored by Manta Sleep. Manta sleep masks are some of the best quality sleeping masks out there in terms of comfort and feel, thanks to its adjustability and ergonomic design. Normally I'd fidget with uncomfortable earbuds in bed under a normal sleeping mask, but Manta has a solution with their integrated speakers and their Manta sound mask, so you can listen to music, audiobooks, or white noise, which I find helps me get the restful sleep I need. Oh my gosh, especially during travel. Trust me, your sleep is worth it. Get yours down below or from mantasleep.com and use code 33ELK at checkout to get 10% off your order. Thank you, Manta Sleep, for sponsoring this video. Now with the ad read out of the way, let's talk a little bit about how to make our opponents get a good long sleep by destroying them! My first instinct once I decided to tackle a reanimator deck was to go Esper or Mardu, as I'm no stranger to the modern deck Goryo's Vengeance, and that's the two primary flavors the list comes in. Looking at the selection, though, had me a bit underwhelmed. Kellis Rune Knight was a discard outlet, Kalia is iconic for her ability to cheat, and something like Quasar could offset the life loss of Vilis. Ultimately, though, I didn't like these options for one reason or another, and I kinda just craved the simplicity of a 2-color deck this time around. As usual, the commander would take a backseat until I figured out some other synergies I wanted to run alongside Vilis. This brings us back to Goryo's Vengeance. One of my favorite things about the modern deck is the fact that it's a reanimate that gives haste for immediate attacks with your big monster. It also gave you a good window for some cheat potential with the Flicker card, letting you keep the reanimated legendary creature forever. Well, Spider-Man gave us the perfect on-attack value legendary in the form of Gwenom, and while looking in deeper in the set, it also gave us an unironically fun legendary designed to cheat in a life-loss, life-gain deck in the form of Mr. Negative, didn't it? Both of which, from now on, I'll be referring to their in-Omen Path names, since I printed them out in paper because I find them funny. Okay, we're a little committed to Orzhov now, but I wanted to find some more synergy, specifically life outlets to help manipulate my life total for Vilis and Withar, before diving into a commander choice. The first natural choice was Reanimate, as it works exactly how you want it to with Vilis. You resolve the card in order from its first text to its last, so Vilis sees the life loss and you draw 8 cards. I also opted to include Bolt MDFCs, like Bogart Trawler and Witch Enchanter, and Pain Lands, to all draw me more cards off Vilis. The on-color rare deserts from Amonkhet that ping you are a perfect fit for this deck, alongside a Sand Scout Desert Ramp package. Brief aside, everyone knows the iconic turn 2 bounce land in a discard to hand size play, but Arid Archway in the deck did that enough with a big monster in hand that I opted to just run Orzhov Basilica as well. Hilarious. Other life total outlets make sense, like Snuff Out, Toxic Deluge, but there's some rather deep cuts in this deck. Plunge into Darkness is a card that lets you pay any amount of life to dig that deep into your library. When combined with the Children of Corliss, it can get rather silly how deep you can dig. And naturally, paying any amount of life is great when you plan to swap life totals anyway, or draw that many cards for doing so. Turning back to the reanimate effects, there's really not that many in Magic. There's Reanimate itself, Life Death, which is sadly not in this deck's colors, Phyrexian Delvers, and an utter deep cut in the form of Shield's Restoration. This all being said, you can still create quite a few more if you know what tutors to run. Grim Servant, for instance, is another copy of Phyrexian Delver, even with no other devotion to black, since Reanimate's a 1-mana spell, and you can grab it with him. And naturally, being an ephemerate deck, you can double the amount of value you get out of this fella, even if it costs a decent chunk of life. You're going to trade it away anyway. For 6 mana, you can also Final Parting for Reanimate and Vilis and put him directly out there into play. So the deck has no shortage of ways to assemble the Vilis and Reanimate effect. As mentioned earlier, Vilis works with Reanimate because of the way it's worded. But why then does the deck run Command the Dreadhorde, which isn't worded in Vilis' favor, since you lose the life before returning the creatures? Well, not only is it just a fine card by its lonesome, but it has incredible synergy with other reanimation lines in the deck, most notably with Withered. You see, if you're rocking Sheoldred the Apocalypse, Elesh Norn Mother of Machines, and Withered in your graveyard, not a hard task to achieve in black with a Violent Tumor that can be flickered or buried alive, you can reanimate all of them for 16 life, in addition to whatever else you can target to get your life hyper low, and then you have 2 Withered triggers thanks to Elesh Norn doubling the ETB ability. You swap your low life total with an opponent, and then swap back and draw that many cards. Sheoldred then raises your life total ridiculously high, because you just drew at least 10 cards. Hilarious, to me at least. Okay, we're starting to get a more clear image of the deck now. Who should be the commander though? Well, I settled on Ailey. And the reasons are quite simple. For starters, after I just described that war crime to you, your first reaction was probably, oh, Praetors, how original. And yeah, you're probably right for that one, but the line of play is funny to me, so I don't care. But it was probably soon followed by, I will be killing you forever if you put this deck across the table for me. And yes, that's a very normal response to seeing a life yo-yo deck like this. And a 2-mana Death Toucher helps curb that violent opponent problem a lot. Ailey, though, has a lot more going for her than just that. She also serves as an invaluable protection piece for any reanimated monster. There's tons of Chaos Warps, Path to Exiles, and Baleful Masteries out there that threaten to get rid of my boy Vilis without putting him back in the graveyard where I can easily scoop him back out again. Ailey here lets me sack him in response to such spells, while allowing me to recoup the life loss I sustained from reanimating him. All of this not mentioning the utility she has with Goryo's Vengeance. If I don't have a flicker spell for the Valgavoth I just spanked you in the air with for 9, or with Egrix to keep her permanently after having a Bolas Citadel turn, I can just sack them. Alright, I feel like I've talked at length now about the deck's core game plan, commander, and setups and how I got there, but how do we practice all of this in a bracket 3 game without shitting the bed to grave hate, or getting a little too risky with the old life total? Well, the deck runs Resolute Archangel, a really easy thing to reanimate to reset the life total in a pinch, even after going ham with Vilis or Valgavoth. Pact Weapon is a card I also picked out for this deck that helps curb the fragility life loss can impose upon you. It draws you additional cards, can make Valgavoth a disgustingly huge beater if you top deck the right card, and is also a discard outlet. All on top of letting you go negative into life totals for a funny life swap kill if you find Withered. I mentioned Children of Corliss earlier as a way to recoup life after a giant payment, and the deck isn't just relying on entombing them or using Grim Servant to find them. The deck runs a small package of 1-drops for Ranger Captain of Eos to go fetch up, to help with various things, on top of course, Ranger Captain of Eos being a wonderful counterplay to counter spells. Also, being an Orzhov deck, the list has no shortage of interaction, running nearly 20 pieces of it. Not mentioned in the interaction suite is a protection suite as well. It's super easy to get Vilis in play in combo, with something like Sheoldred and Keurig and draw your whole deck, but I wasn't really interested in comboing out with the list, and I was a lot more interested in a tempo-based reanimation game plan with a sprinkle of life swapping to close out some games. In this case, Vilis would just be a beater alongside Valgavoth and friends, and I run plenty of protection spells on top of Ailey to keep them safe and sound, like Shajiri's Shelter, Eerie Interlude, Werefox Bodyguard, Parting Gust, and Dawn Charm. Very easy to find these cards, by the way, when you have an at-will card draw stapled onto Vilis, as well as tons of pain lands to filter through more cardboard. All of these on top of the reanimation suite, that means Vilis is basically here to stay once he enters play. I still haven't gotten a lot of reps in with the deck yet. It's possible it needs a couple more beaters that it can reanimate to close out games more efficiently, but overall it's a good deck for Vilis, and that's really all I was thirsting for anyway. Whoa, wait, Elk from the future here. I'm also considering a Vito or Sorin, the 2-mana Sorin that flips, as legendary creatures for the deck as well, because I can return them with Goryo's Vengeance or a different reanimation spell to big life gain nuke someone, especially with the life swapping or a Children of Corliss. Is there a deck you've built around one specific card? What silly side synergies came out alongside it so your deck wasn't a glass cannon? Let me know down in the comments below, and until next time, bye! It allows you to draw additional cards. It can make Valgavoth... Wow. Someone doesn't like Valgavoth.